Others in Karachi were killed. January the 21st, at least 24 people killed and 40 other injured in a powerful explosion targeting pilgrims returning from Iran in Mastung, Balochistan. 22nd January, at least 7 Levy's personnel were killed and 10 others, including a Spanish tourist, wounded in Pochak, Balochistan. 22nd January, 6 policemen and a boy killed and 11 other injured when a police van was bombed in Chasada.
Yes, Mr. Zaid Hamid, as you saw the report, and unfortunately, just in the last 25 days, we have lost more than 200 innocent lives, which includes all kinds of sectors, which includes media, which includes innocent citizens, which include our security officers, police officers. But before we start a discussion, I would like to show a clip in which a couple of weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago, you mentioned about how bloody this year of 2014 would be. Your predictions, unfortunately, those were not the good ones for Pakistan, but they seem to be coming true. Let's have a look at that clip and then we will start our discussion.
2013 की हिमाकतों और जहालतों और ब्लंडर्स को सामने रखते हुए फॉर गॉड सेक इस लीडरशिप को इस वक्त चाहिए कि होश के नाखून लें, वरना कुछ भी नहीं बचेगा। न जुडिशरी बचेगी, न आर्मी बचेगी, न मुल्क बचेगा, न नवाज शरीफ साहब बचेंगे, न उनके आगे आने वाली नस्लें बचेंगी। Now, warning to Pakistanis that a major high-intensity conflict is coming our way. In Pakistani streets, all the police officers and armed forces officers are being killed by terrorists in roadside bombs and car bombings. From now, the war has stretched from Karachi to tribal areas, and the economy is collapsing. And Pakistan Army for the next 7 or 8 months would be fighting the urban insurgency. They will be desperately trying to control this urban violence, resurgence of urban violence.
Yes, Mr. Zaid Hamid, as you mentioned 3 weeks ago that 2014 will be a bloody year. And unfortunately, in the past 25 days, it is proving to be true. Now, what do you say? Is this the final beginning of the battle in Pakistan now between TTP and our security forces?
You see, again, this is very unfortunate that we have been proven true. That 2014 is going to be one of the bloodiest years in Pakistan's history. And this was not based on magic. It was pure defense and security analysis. We knew the environment in which Pakistan is entering into the year of 2014. And we knew the regional game. The Americans were withdrawing from Afghanistan. The Indian RSS, Hindu Zionists were rising to power in India. Pakistani state was collapsing. And there was utter confusion between the political parties of Pakistan. The media was anarchic. The judiciary had already collapsed. In fact, it was hostile to the Pakistani armed forces. And the insurgents, whether they were religious insurgents from TTP or secular insurgents of Balochistan Liberation Army or the urban warriors of Karachi, all had a free hand in waging a war which was demolishing the state from within. And now the level had come.
But Mr. Zaid Hamid, answer me this first, that what causes this recent wave of extreme terrorism, that we are seeing in the last 25 days? What has caused this, wave of terrorist attacks?
You see,
they were attacking the entire 2013 year as well.
For the last 7 or 8 years, the war that they were waging against Pakistan was called the fourth generation war. We have talked about it extensively on this forum also and on different television channels.
Right.
And how the fourth generation war is waged using the media, using the judiciary, using collapsing the economy, insurgent groups, terrorist groups. But now, the unfortunate part is that this fourth generation war has been modified, has transformed, has morphed into a next generation of lethal warfare, that is the fifth generation war. And this is the dangerous part. We could see that it's coming. We knew Pakistan has already been pushed into that stage. And in the fourth generation war, you try to achieve certain strategic objectives. Like in Yugoslavia, for example, they wanted to balkanize Yugoslavia in a very carefully crafted and designed map. Serbia was to be made separate, Bosnia, Croatia, Montenegro. So it was a designed plan, and they created a controlled anarchy, and they were able to balkanize, they were able to divide Yugoslavia on the lines they wanted to divide without creating chaos and anarchy in rest of the Europe. So it was a very controlled demolition plan, which worked. Similarly, against the Soviet Union, it was a very controlled demolition plan that Central Asia was broken away from the Soviet Union, and Russia was isolated as the Russian Federation or Russia as a country, but the upheaval in the Central Asia and the rest of the world was contained. That's called the fourth generation war, in which you achieve an objective, but you control the destruction within the region.
So according to you, the fourth generation war level has been accomplished in Pakistan.
See, what happened
is,
the objectives of fourth generation war was why they were waging this war against Pakistan. And the first and the foremost objective was to denuclearize Pakistan, to take away Pakistan's nuclear weapon. Then the second level was to balkanize it, keep separate Balochistan, separate Pashtun areas, separate Sindh from Pakistan. But they could not balkanize without denuclearizing Pakistan. One of the greatest reasons, geopolitical, geostrategic reasons of American invasion into Afghanistan was to create the environment in Pakistan to denuclearize the country, for which they had to support the separatist groups, they had to support the terrorist groups, to give the perception that Pakistan is a failing state, is a failed state, is a dysfunctional state whose nuclear weapons are about to fall into the hands of the insurgents and terrorists, particularly so-called Al-Qaeda, which the TTP, the name TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan they call it, but here in Pakistan we call it Tehreek-e-Taliban Pentagon, because they were created by the CIA for the very simple purpose, the purpose which you see the Free Syrian Army doing in Syria right now, demolishing the state of Syria by support of the CIA. So TTP is actually the FSA, Free Syrian Army, of this Afghanistan, Pakistan, AFPAC region. So they could not denuclearize Pakistan in the last 8 or 9 years of war that they were doing. They could not create enough anarchy in Pakistan where they would dismember Pakistan according to their plan. So now they have upped the ante. Now they have taken it to the new levels. Fifth generation war is primarily...
But what would they achieve by, raising the level of terrorism?
I'm coming to it now. The fifth generation war is actually an anarchic war. This war is not waged to achieve a geopolitical objective of precision dismemberment of a country. This is waged to complete total, absolute chaotic anarchy in the country. What is happening in Iraq now? For no reason, there are car bombings all over Baghdad, there are car bombings all over the country, killing people, constantly keeping them under pressure, constantly keeping them under stress, constantly increasing the stress level in the society, that society implodes within itself. That's why they're targeting the media now, they're targeting the polio teams, they're targeting the religious institutions, schools, bus, train lines, power structure, gas infrastructure, armed forces. I mean, there is nothing sacred anymore.
But Mr. Zaid Hamid, like our internal forces, our own security forces, they need to play their role as well. If some enemy from outside is attacking and creating all this anarchy in our country, what is the responsibility? What should be done by the security forces of that country?
You need to understand one thing, again, as we had said first about the fourth generation war and now about this fifth generation war. Fourth generation war and the fifth generation war cannot be fought by the armed forces alone. It's primarily an information war, it's primarily a judicial war, it's primarily a political war, it's primarily a diplomatic war, it's primarily an economic war, and military axis is only an axis of it. So what has happened in the Pakistani state in the last many years is that while the Pakistan army was containing the militant threat, Pakistan army itself was under attack, being stabbed in the back from the media, from the judiciary, from the government, from the parliament, and from its own foreign office, which betrayed Pakistan army and did not create the conducive regional diplomatic environment for army to operate in. So this is what we are saying. It is not the failure of the armed forces, not the failure of the intelligence agencies. Pakistan today has almost 4,000 terrorists captured with suicide bomb jackets, with people who were caught in operations against the Pakistani armed forces, planting bombs. I mean, almost 4,000 terrorists. But Not a single terrorist has been hanged in the last 13 years. The judiciary actually releases them honorably.
So then the question comes on the judicial system as well. Mr. Zaid Hamid, I have to take a break here. And after the break, we would like to know that since this level of the fourth generation war is gone to the fifth generation war, what would be the consequences that Pakistan would face now? So we will stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back, viewers. We're talking and analyzing and discussing the situation in Pakistan right now, the recent wave of the terrorist attack as the beginning of this year that we have been seeing, and the response of the Pak army with the jet planes airstrike in the North Waziristan area. Is this the response towards the fourth generation war, which is entering into the fifth generation war, to stop these kind of scenarios happening in Pakistan? Or is the Pak army has lost its patience and threshold on waiting to the political leadership to be prepared and let them go ahead and conduct these airstrikes? We're talking about different political leadership role as well and the judiciary role as well. Mr. Zaid Hamid, before we start our discussion, we would like to see what does Imran Khan has to say after the Pak army military strike happened in North Waziristan. Let's listen to him first and then we will start our discussion.
चाबी है अमन की, वो है कबायली इलाके के लोगों के पास। उनको साथ मिलाना, उनको कंसल्ट करना चाहिए था, डायलॉग में शिरकत करवानी चाहिए थी, और फिर ये आहिस्ता आहिस्ता हमें पता चल जाना था कैसे दहशतगर्द हैं जो बात करने के लिए नहीं तैयार, उनको आप आइसोलेट कर सकते थे। हम अपनी फौज के साथ खड़े हैं, फौज ने बड़ी कुर्बानियां दी, लेकिन क्या ये अगर सारी कौम को पता हो और एक पेज पे हम सारे हों तो क्या ये बेहतर ना हो? क्या ये बेहतर ना होता कि हम सारों को कॉन्फिडेंस में लिया जाता? अगर ऑपरेशन भी करना है तो हमें बताएं तो क्या करना।
Yes, Mr. Zaid Hamid, as you saw Mr. Imran saying that we are supporting our army, but it would have been better if we would have been taken in confidence, if the people in that area would have been taken in confidence before the military strike happened there.
You see, now coming to what happened in North Waziristan, Pakistan army for the last 7 months, ever since its political government had come into power, had been showing restraint. Pakistan army was not allowed to go after the terrorists and the militants. Army was there, they were holding their lines, but they were not attacking them because the political government has said, and Imran Khan as well, that we are going to hold dialogue and talks. And army had allowed them, all right, if you can engage the militants and bring them to talks, fine enough with us. But that should have also put a restriction on the militants not to attack the armed forces, not to attack the state. And what actually happened was that while the government was confused and disoriented and they were holding the army back, the space was given to the militants to be aggressive, to be very proactive. The entire country was opened up for them because the army was not allowed to chase them, while the army was only holding the lines which the army had occupied or captured before. So what happened was, in the last 6 months, you saw an upsurge of insurgency, rebellion, violence, sabotage, subversion, and the nation was bleeding profusely since the elections. And because the militants had seen the confusion within the government, they had seen that the government is holding the army back, and the space was all left open for the militants to strike at will. And when the 2014 started, their handlers, their sponsors, the CIA and the RAW, they upped the ante. They realized that this is the critical time. 2014 is a very critical time for them, as the Americans would be drawing down from Afghanistan. And in the 12 years or 13 years of their presence in Afghanistan, they have been defeated inside, and their strategic objective of denuclearizing and dismemberment of Pakistan has not been achieved.
But then, Mr. Zaid Hamid, you just mentioned that America would be evacuating from Afghanistan in 2014.
Not all
NATO,
of them. Not all of them.
And NATO forces would be evacuating. So, and then now they are still going for peace talks with the Taliban after this many long years of war. It didn't work out. So they're also talking about having peace talks with them. So then, doesn't that mean that we should be doing the same thing?
Let me come to it now. You see, so coming to the North Waziristan operation, let me answer that first. That once Pakistan army was suffering, constantly suffering in the last 3 weeks, multiple attacks were being carried out against the Pakistani armed forces. In North Waziristan, there was an attack on a Khajuri checkpost, lots of casualties for the army. And then in Bannu, you saw almost dead and wounded, 60 shaheed and wounded. And then an attack near the GHQ. So it was a message the militants were sending to the army that we'll strike at will. And the perception was being generated.
And at the cantonments.
And in the cantonments.
Not
and the
just
perception,
any place, but at the cantonments of the country.
And this is something that army refused to take this nonsense any further. If the political parties were taken into confidence, if the all parties conference had been called, if the army had called a press conference that we are going to retaliate, the advantage of surprise would have been lost. If these strikes and these kind of strikes, when militants melt away into the mountains, when militants are not an organized force but an irregular guerrilla force which moves freely, rapidly, intelligence-based operations are critical. So when the operations was gathered, these militants are gathered here, planning the next strike, army had to operate fast. And they did. They sent in the F-16s at night, and in the morning gunship helicopters were sent to mop up whatever was left. And ever since those operations have taken place, you are seeing that major militant commanders have been killed, lots of their cadre have been killed, and they are dispersed. They are in panic right now. No major attacks have taken place ever since.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, there is a question that rises here. We do support our army, there is no doubt about it. But if the Pak-Afghan border is not sealed, then what's the point of all these operations? All those extremists would run away to Afghanistan.
This is where we are going to come, because now, as we feel, as we say, the battle for Pakistan has now entered the decisive phase. Pakistan army now, so far, it has only carried out surgical strikes. The ground troops have not moved to clear up those areas. The ground troops will have to move now. But the ownership has to be taken by the political government. Pakistan army can respond through airstrikes and respond through artillery, but cannot capture the area.
Is the political leadership taking this responsibility?
So far, no.
You think is the political leadership capable of taking it?
What does taking the responsibility means? Let's define that first. Taking the responsibility means that coming on the national mainstream media and saying we are asking the army, we are authorizing the army to enter into North Waziristan and clear up the sanctuaries.
Was Nawaz Sharif taken on board before Rahil Sharif decided to attack this airstrike?
The point is that when army is under attack, in any circumstances, army is totally authorized to respond back. They don't have to take the permission from the Prime Minister. But in this particular case, Army Chief did inform the Prime Minister that we are going for an airstrike. That's it. It was a formality which they did. But otherwise also, from a military operations point of view, when army posts come under fire, they fire back. They are not allowed, they don't have to ask the political government to respond back to every terrorist attack, because hundreds of attacks take place every day and army responds to them. But the point is that political government now, what they have to do is direct the army to enter into North Waziristan, because there are going to be fallout of refugees. Refugees are going to come out. They have to be rehabilitated. They have to be managed. Then the Americans have to be told to back off. Because when Pakistan army operated in South Waziristan, Americans actually betrayed Pakistan, that they vacated the security posts which were in front of South Waziristan and allowed the militants to melt into Afghanistan, from where the Karzai government helicopters picked them up and took them to Bagram to protect them. This is the betrayal that Pakistan army saw. So
how can we guarantee that this time this is not going to happen?
There's only one. Last time we trusted the Americans. Americans had given us clear guarantees to Pakistan army that we are going to maintain the post along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border in front of South Waziristan. So when Pakistan army move in, the Americans would not move from their position and stop the infiltration or escape route of the TTP.
But do you think America would give this guarantee to our army?
No. Americans will not give us the guarantee. Americans have betrayed us. Now we know Americans are patronizing the TTP. At that time, few years back, Pakistan didn't know that. So now what Pakistan army, and this is where the political government has to do, is tell the Americans that we are going to go in hot pursuit. If the militants melt into Afghanistan from North Waziristan, because when the army start to push them, they'll go into Afghanistan. And that's where we'll have to hit them hard. And that's where the political leadership...
What you're saying is that we need to go to Afghanistan to hit them.
See, Afghanistan is no country now. It's total anarchic. There is no government. Mayor of Kabul...
But don't you think that we are crossing the national limits?
You see, the point is, for years, Americans have been droning Pakistan under the same pretext that the Haqqani network and Mullah Umar and Hikmatyar, they are hiding in Pakistan. That's why we are doing the drones. We can use the same argument on their face, right into their face, and say, you people have betrayed us, you have supported this Tehreek-e-Taliban Pentagon, and now when we are about to crush them, they are going to give them a space to escape. Americans attacked the Salala checkpost, killed 26 of our soldiers and men, because after that Pakistan stopped the NATO supply for 10 months, precisely for the same reason. That checkpost was there to stop the infiltration of TTP. Mullah Fazlullah is based in Afghanistan. He's got an Afghan passport. He travels to all over the world. India and CIA takes him to Langley on Afghan passport. He is the most wanted man, the head of the TTP. We all know this now. So now,
isn't there a way to go through United Nations to pursue on this?
This is what I'm saying. This is where the political government has to deliver. Army cannot fight the diplomatic war. Army cannot go to UN. And then secondly, if the political government does not take the ownership of this operation, these were the crises, these were the reasons why Pakistan Army has been fighting for the last 12 years with their hands tied behind their back. No diplomatic support, no international support, no UN support, absolute no media support and no judicial support. How can Army fight? And this is where Nawaz Sharif has to bring judiciary on board. This is where the media has to be restrained from speaking hostile nonsense against the army once the army starts to go after these militants. So unless and until these access are covered by the political government, they would be stabbing the army in the back once the army starts to chase these militants. And this is what the army is asking them to do. Army can make precision strikes. They can strike through F-16, they can strike through artillery, they can strike through hit through helicopter gunships. But once the army starts to move the ground troops to capture the sanctuaries which the TTP has in North Waziristan, there are going to be fallouts. And above all, the biggest fallout would be that militants are going to hit all over the country trying to release the pressure from them in North Waziristan. There are 4,000 militants that we have already captured in various jails. And then their sleeper cells from Karachi to Peshawar are going to strike, as they're striking now. The polio team, the train, the buses, power structure, they are going to strike ruthlessly everywhere.
But don't you think that our government has come up with such a fabulous plan of shuffling these criminals from one province to another without even exposing their locations? Don't you think that they have this fabulous plan that will work out to save those criminals?
This is insanity. This is madness. The country is in a state of war. And all the government can do is, they can shuffle them from one prison to another, hoping that militants would not jailbreak them. I mean, this is insanity. This is banana republics do that. Strong states don't do that. Strong states put them on trial.
Their system is protecting those criminals by shuffling them around.
Iraq is a failed dysfunctional state. Despite that, their government had enough guts that they hanged 26 terrorists in one day. Iranians, there was one bomb blast in Iran killing 20 or 26 Iranian Pasdarans, and next day Iranians hanged 22 terrorists, and no further bombing took place after that. Pakistan has 4,000 terrorists captured, and the government has put a moratorium, a ban on death penalty. How insane they can be.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, I have to take a break here. Like you mentioned about this saddening thing that, we have captured the terrorists, but they are just in our jails, and now the government is planning to shuffle them here and there to protect them from the terrorists. Anyway, when we come back, I would like to clear this one more confusion about drone attacks that Imran Khan and PTI has always said that if the drones would stop, the terrorism in Pakistan will also stop. We will discuss on that. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back, viewers. We are discussing on the current crisis in Pakistan. We would like to know that what should be the political leadership strategy to deal with such crisis. Mr. Zaid Hamid, let's have a look at one of the government's representatives, Rana Tanveer, and let's see what does he has to say about the current crisis that are happening in Pakistan.
जब हमारे पर्सोनल पे हमारे जवानों पे अटैक होंगे तो फिर यकीनी तौर पे हम रिएक्ट करेंगे। तो ये जो अभी हुआ है ये तो एक समझ लें वो फेज है, लेकिन इंशाल्लाह आने वाले चंद दिनों में ये फैसला हो जाएगा कि गवर्नमेंट का जो इस सिलसिले में अब फाइनल फैसला है, मुज़ाकरात हैं या ऑपरेशन करना है या फोर्स का इस्तेमाल है, उस पर इंशाल्लाह आने वाले दिनों में आप देखेंगे फैसला हो।
Mr. Zaid Hamid, as you heard Rana Tanveer saying that we will see some final shaping plan from the government that as to they're going to go for the peace talks or they're going to go for the targeted operation. But before we come to the current government part, we would like to know that PTI has always been claimed that if drones would be stopped, the terrorism in Pakistan can be controlled. But now when we see all these attacks happening in Pindi, in Bannu, and then the pilgrims bus gets attacked, Taliban, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, they never mention anything about drones. They never say that we are doing this because of drones. They say that the Bannu attack is the revenge of Waliur Rahman's death. So they have a different reasoning for every attack. Then why drones are the key problem in this?
See, this is the most unfortunate part, that the most educated elite of the country were completely befooled, completely made to look like absolute idiots by the stance taken by Imran Khan and PTI. That all this insurgency and violence and fourth generation war and fifth generation war and Balochistan Liberation Army and the sabotage and subversion that is taking place in Pakistan is because of the drone strikes. That's insanity. Drones is one of the weapons waged against Pakistan. The insurgency in Pakistan is not because of drones. The Balochistan Liberation Army has been destroying trains, killing Pakistanis in Balochistan, demolishing the entire state of Pakistan within the perimeter of Balochistan.
They never mentioned anything about drones.
They are not doing it. They are not doing this insurgency because of drones. The urban war in Karachi, where every day 15-20 people are being butchered and urban gangs are fighting back by various political parties, that's not being done because of drones. The bombing that has taken place in Rawalpindi near the GSU recently, the TTP itself says we have taken the revenge for the Lal Masjid in Islamabad, Lal Masjid attack. They never mentioned drones.
And the attack on media personnel, they say that if media would propagate a negative impression, they will get this from
them. The entire valley of Sawat was captured by Mullah Fazlullah, and they were to butcher and behead people because of their own vested interest. That was never because of drones. The point is, all this insurgency in Pakistan is sponsored by RAW and CIA, and drones is one of the weapons of CIA to create further anarchy. Even if you stop the drones have not been hitting Pakistan for the last 3 weeks almost now. But Pakistan is facing the bloodiest phase of its history.
So this bubble of drone has burst?
You see, now it should. PTI workers should wake up to this harsh, brutal reality. They were absolute idiots in believing this, that all this insurgencies in Pakistan is because of drones. Drones, even if you stop drones, this insurgency will get bloodier by the week, unless and until you do what we are telling you now.
So then what would you say about the argument of PTI that they have been fighting this war for the past 12 years? What about all that then?
You see, we have already answered that. Again, that's a ridiculous, stupid argument. Pakistan Army has been fighting this war for the last 12 years with their hands tied behind their back. Did the judiciary support the army? Did the media support the army? Did the government and the parliament support the army?
But Mr. Zaid Hamid, during the times of Musharraf, you think the army was tied?
You see, the point is, during the time of Musharraf, for the first 6 or 7 years, army was actually at the receiving end. They were totally disoriented and confused. We always say it's the Musharraf's policies which have destroyed Pakistan. He pushed Pakistan into a war of which he knew no consequence. What would happen out of it? But the fact is, for the last 7 years, there's democracy in the country. And even now, but still the ironic situation is that even now, the anti-terrorist law which the Nawaz Sharif government has been passed through an ordinance by a presidential order, not through the parliamentary order.
Pakistan Protection Ordinance.
Pakistan Protection Order has been passed by the president because the parliament still does not function, despite having democracy for 7 years. This is the insanity of it. The political parties are so confused, so divided, so disoriented. Even the Pakistan Protection Ordinance, they could not pass. And still you heard this government representative saying that still they are confused what to do about it. Whether to take an action, or to talk to them, or to beg the terrorists, or to...
Mr. Zaid Hamid, do you think they have all this time to them to still stay in a confused state?
You see, that's what we are saying. In the last 3 weeks, the violence that has taken place has shaken up the entire country. I mean, they have really been shaken up. Even right now, The whole country is blockaded by protests and roadblocks because
we
people
saw
are
the
protesting
Hazara
against
community,
this violence.
people sitting with their coffins of their loved ones over the roads that died in the terrorist attack of the bus.
The point is, this, as we said, this government is going to commit suicide with its own stupidity. This government does not need any enemies. They don't need TTP or BLA to bring them down, or the political opposition. They're good enough for it.
How do you see the recent session happening between the government and the army personnel, in which our Chief of Army Staff was there, DGISI, DGMI, and then Prime Minister, Interior Minister, and then they came up with the surgical operations.
You see,
don't you think now the direction is sort of getting in the right direction?
You see, they're going to call it a surgical operation, correct? Because the in Waziristan, there are lots of pockets. There are pockets of tribes which have alliances with Pakistan Army. There are tribes which are Afghan Taliban who are not hostile to Pakistan. But there are pockets where there are TTPs making itself, has dug itself in. And obviously once the army move in, army will make sure that civilian villages, civilian population, friendly tribes, the Waziri tribes that who live there are not harmed. The Pakistan Afghans who live there, who are friendly to Pakistan, are not damaged. And you only target those militant groups which are backed by CIA and RAW. And that's why. But the point is, again, Pakistan Army has the capacity, they have the will, they have the means, and they have the resources to destroy the TTP in North Waziristan. That's not a problem. But the problem is, what will you do to the urban insurgents who are operating from Peshawar to Karachi, who can be neutralized? I mean, this is the irony of the situation.
So isn't that the part of the intelligence agencies to locate them? Where are those extremists hiding in the urban areas?
Destroying the terrorist network, creating a deterrence is one of the most important aspects of it. And you create deterrence by hanging them, by putting them to death. There are 4,000 terrorists, as we said, we have it.
Why who's supposed to touch that area where comes the death sentence for terrorists?
See, the government of Pakistan had put a ban, moratorium on death sentence. As a result, terrorists are very happy. The happiest, Pakistan is haven for terrorists because the government is an idiot, the judiciary does not convict them, and the government has put a ban on death sentence while Pakistan is actually imploding under the 5th generation war. If the government is sincere, all they have to do is hand over all those terrorists to the army, tell the army to court-martial them and hang them.
But isn't this been taken care in this recent Pakistan Protection Ordinance bill?
We will have
that they will be handing over the criminals and the extremists to army.
We will have to see that. Whether they would just be handing them over to army for detention, or they would also allow the army to put them to trial and hang them. If you hang those terrorists who are already captured, and the Pakistan Army eliminates their sanctuaries in North Waziristan, this urban insurgency, at least from the TTP axis, can be eliminated in 2 weeks. But the government remains stupid. The government remains confused, disoriented, and in fact treacherous. Because they don't have the muscle, they don't have the feet to stand, to take up the world community and stand up and say, we are going to hang them.
Tell me one thing, that every time when we talk about terrorism, the major stop we see is on the death penalty to the terrorists. As a simple citizen, with the information that I have, with the knowledge that I have, I would like to know that can a citizen of Pakistan file petition to the Supreme Court against government to raise this restriction over this law of not sentencing the terrorists to death?
See, my question is, when we are doing this program, we are actually doing a petition to the government and to the nation and to the Supreme Court. They are not deaf and dumb and blind. They hear what we say. And they know it very clearly. Can
the Hazara community people and all those whose loved ones have been killed and murdered through those extremists, can they file a petition with the Supreme Court against government?
Again, let me give you a very ironic example. Just a few days back, the Chief Justice of the Peshawar High Court has given a statement. Stunning. He says now that Pakistan is being dismembered like the former Soviet Union. He knows it. They know it very clearly. And he is part of the judiciary which has been protecting the terrorists for the last 13 years. And now, what's the point of filing a petition when he himself is saying, we know Pakistan is being dismembered like Soviet Union? So this is the irony of it. They know it. They know it all along. They're part of it. The system, the people who are running it now.
Zaid Hamid sir, why do we see that if an ordinance has to be passed, it gets through everything within a couple of hours, overnight, but when something like this, that includes the benefit of the citizens of Pakistan, it takes forever, and there are so many complications,
You see,
legal or illegal.
This is exactly what trying to make you understand. It's a deliberate, controlled demolition of the state, where the organs of the state are involved in demolishing it. The politicians, the judiciary, the media.
But Nawaz Sharif doesn't have to do anything with this. That was the Zardari's chapter.
Nawaz Sharif has everything to do with this. It's been 7 months. He's most indecisive. He has not been able to pass a single law.
How
from
can
the
he
parliament.
unlock this? How can he unlock this riddle?
He can't. He doesn't have the capacity. Unfortunately, he is not known for his wisdom or genius. The unfortunate part is he's not even known for his courage, nor he's known for his honor. And this is the unfortunate part, because now, unless and until army can push him into it, he will never do it. And this is where the critical role of the army comes into play.
But don't you think that army has attained that role of having an upper hand on the political leadership?
It's not a question of upper hand.
After having this...
See, it is not a question of being an upper hand. It's a question of being advisors in matters of national security. It's army's job to defend Pakistan.
So then why can't they advise the government as an advisor then?
I assume they're doing that. I assume they're telling the government to back them up. I assume they're telling the...
So do we see your prediction that, inshallah, let's hope that we get to see in future coming true that this ban on the death sentence to the extremists, to the terrorists might be uplifted?
I have personally no doubt if Pakistan does not start hanging these terrorists, we can never win this war against insurgency, violence and sabotage. Pakistan will have to hang them. Just like if you send Pakistan army into a military operation against them, what will you do to the terrorists? You capture. You can't send them back. You can't give them befitting dinners and send them back into the battlefield again to fight you some other day. You got to hang them. You can't keep them in jails either. So this is what I'm saying. We are losing this war only for one reason. In Pakistan, the said terrorists are not being sentenced to death.
Mr. Zaid Hamid, one last minute left, and I would like to know this from you, that do we see at least one axis of Pakistan, which is army now, which is proceeding in the right direction? You always have been saying that the former chief of army, General Kayani, has not been that much vocal as much as he should have been. So do you think General Raheel Sharif is proceeding in the right direction now?
So far, whatever Raheel has done, I'm very happy with that. He has taken the stand, he has pushed the government, he has responded well in the battlefield, he has made all the right moves. And personally, as long as the army stays united and responds as it is responding now, I have very strong faith that we will come out of this crisis. But this is something, the weak links of this war, the final battle has begun. But whether we will win this war or not would depend on one critical factor: how would the government respond now? Judiciary has to be brought on board, media has to be restrained, and political and diplomatic support has to be created. If this is not done, army would not be able to win this war. The critical decision, unfortunately, lies not in the hand of the army chief, but in the hand of the Prime Minister. And this is what makes me very fearful. We are led by a man, he's totally incapable, confused, disoriented, and coward. That is the dangerous part.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaid Hamid. Viewers, we discussed about the current scenario, current extreme terrorism situation in Pakistan. The one good thing that we do see is the response of our Pak army, which has been shown through the recent air jet strikes on the North Waziristan. But we must understand that all the axis has to support and stand with our Pak army. That's it for tonight. See you next Sunday. Until then, take good care of yourself and your Pakistan. Allah Hafiz and good night.